Let's just quickly confirm the result then of the Chinese Grand Prix. This is the order in which the cars finished, and I'm sure you don't really need reminding that it is a 1-2 for Red Bull. Sebastian Vettel there finishing first, with Mark Webber just behind him in second spot, 10.9 seconds behind. And then Brawn GP, they didn't have it all their own way today. Jenson Button, followed by Rubens Barrichello. Jenson, of course, does still lead the Drivers' Championship. Good news for McLaren today. Heikki Kovalainen and Lewis Hamilton finishing in the points. Hamilton in the points phase, third successive Grand Prix. Timo Glock behind them. Sebastian Buemi, he impressed at times today. Fernando Alonso finished ninth after starting second. More bad news for Ferrari. Kimi Raikkonen was their highest finisher in 10th. And then it was Bourdais, followed by Heidfeld, followed by Kubica, who had a big moment with Jarno Trulli. We'll look at that very shortly. Giancarlo Fisichella, Nico Rosberg, Nelson Piquet in the Renault. Adrian Sutil, who had a big accident towards the end in Force India. Nakajima, Massa, not good for Ferrari. His car just stopped out on the grid. And finally, Jarno Trulli for Toyota. So that's how it finished, and this is what you get if you win the Chinese Grand Prix. Christian Horner is with us. Christian, congratulations. Tell us what the atmosphere is like down there in the pits, in the paddock, amongst all the team.
Oh, it's fantastic. I mean, it's a brilliant team result. It's a great result for Red Bull. You know, their commitment to motorsport has been huge, and the effort that's gone, you know, into this result here and in Milton Keynes, and brilliantly executed by a good strategy and you know, two fantastic drives today by both Sebastian and Mark.
We'll hear from both of your drivers in the press conference in just a few seconds, but you spoke last night and you said it was an aggressive strategy. You wanted your cars up there, up the front. How did you feel when you saw the rain coming in?
Well, with the rain, we know we had a good car in the wet. We could see last race in Malaysia, but the pace car was out for, you know, we were getting a bit stressed with how long the pace car was out there for. Our guys were calling on the radio to, you know, say that the track was in good condition, but then they just got their heads down and went for it. And I mean, it used to be stressful when DC was driving for us, but that was nothing like it was today.
Stressful for different reasons sometimes, I suppose. Let's just talk about how stressful it was on the pit wall. We saw a shot of you there. Your leg was constantly wobbling. In fact, it is still wobbling just slightly now. How was it on the pit wall?
It was actually very calm. I mean, we had a clear strategy at you know, the earliest opportunity. We were looking to close down the race, and then Sebastian went and put all of our hearts in our mouths when he decided to overtake Jenson, whilst knowing he still had a stop to go. So, but you know, they were very confident in the car. They had great pace. They had a good balance, and the strategy worked very well for us today.
We can see you on the pit wall there. You're actually looking pretty calm, to be honest. At what point did you think, hold on a minute, we could do this? We could get a 1-2 here.
Well, with 10 laps to go, you know, you start to think about the finish, and then, you know, we've had a couple of reliability worries, you know, in free practice, and then you start looking at all the data and so on. But you know, the guys did a brilliant job on the pit wall in the pit stops today, and supported, you know, back from the UK. It was a fantastic team effort.
OK, well, DC, we've already discussed your involvement in the team over the years, and of course, as we all know, this is all down to you. You primed them, you stepped aside at the right time and allowed Sebastian to come in and get the win. Well done.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I wish I could take the credit, but no, it's been a tremendous team effort. Christian and I obviously paired up 4 years ago when Red Bull started their own racing team, and there's been a lot of difficult steps over that period of time, and I've lived it with the team all the way through, and I'm absolutely delighted. Congratulations to Christian and the whole team. There was a lot of happy people back in Milton Keynes today as we watched that race unfold. Second and first place, you can't get any better than that.
No, I mean, I can be flippant if I like, but of course it is the hard work of everyone in Milton Keynes, everyone here, and people like David, who have worked so hard for Red Bull over the past few years to take you from where you were when you first got involved to where you are now.
No, absolutely. I think, you know, the whole team, you know, all the guys at Milton Keynes. I mean, Adrian stayed at home this weekend because he's working on the next upgrade for us. And imagine when we get our double diffuser. So
well, watch out the rest of the grid, eh, Mike?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, everyone's been talking about the double diffusers, and we saw a great result for the team without one. So yeah, look out. But in the dry, Christian, if it had been dry, did you think you had the car that could have won the race from the bronze? Obviously, you looked better at the last race in the wet, but what did you feel if it had been dry?
Well, if it had been dry, it would have been a race really against a stopwatch for us. We were going to go for a 3-stop strategy, a really aggressive, you know, first stint. And we thought we could beat them to the last pit stop, so we thought we held the pace. We saw in Q2 yesterday, you know, fuel load for fuel load, tyre for tyre, we were competitive with them, so we decided to roll the dice and have a real go at it, and it paid off for us in both conditions.
Why do you think your car's so fast in the round? We saw it, I think, just unfolding in Malaysia before they stopped the race, and today you had the legs on everybody. Did you spot this in winter testing? Or?
I think that the car's, been very good in the high-speed corners. It's got a great aero package on the car. And we made the decision to release the car very late. It's only just over 2 months old. And I think that decision's been, justified in the performance that we've seen so far. And we've got more development steps to come now with clarity in the regulations. We know that, there's more performance from the floor that we can see. So the first couple of races were frustrating not to, to get a podium, but I think that we're now firmly on the scoreboard and can look forward to a really competitive year.
Fantastic, Christian. Thank you very much. It does sound ominous that you've got Adrian back at base working on an update, but that is yours. No one's going to take that away from you. Where can you go from here? What does this do for Red Bull Racing for the coming season and the coming years?
Well, it's a breakthrough result for us, and there's a long season ahead. And we can see that we're competitive with both drivers. So I think the sky's the limit.
Great. Well, I'm sure you've got lots of celebrations and lots of conversations to have, so you can head off. And also, thank you for your hospitality today. The coffee's great, the racing was great. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
OK, and let's now hear from both the Christian's drivers and Jenson Button in the drivers' press conference. Fantastic. Congratulations to Sebastian. Just to let you know, we have the technology on standby. If you do want to get involved, we'd love to have your emails, f1@bbc.co.uk. We've got Martin Brundle, we've got Mike, we've got DC here, and we will try and get through a few of your questions before the end of the F1 forum. But right now, let's talk about the racing once again. And David, let's start by discussing Sebastian Vettel's quality in the wet. This is almost kind of Monza Mark II, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we saw in Monza last year, pole position, and he won in the Toro Rosso, which wasn't as competitive during the course of the season as what we've seen with the Red Bull so far. So I guess, the team were so confident going into a wet race that he'd already shown that despite not being very experienced in Formula One, he's an exceptional driver in the wet. I didn't see him put a foot wrong.
And Martin, I'm sorry to interrupt your tea drinking, to have a quick discussion about F1.
You've been watching a race.
Let's talk about the moment, the hairy moment, where it could have gone all very wrong indeed for Sebastian Vettel and Sebastian Buemi.
Clearly got an issue. I think he could have gone steaming past. He was being very cautious, got a great chance to win the race, and Buemi just didn't seem to clock the whole thing unfolding. Easy to, from a camera angle looking down through the spray, to say why didn't he see him, but when you're looking through 150 metres of spray, it's an altogether different view, isn't it, David?
Yeah, indeed. You're just not going to see what's happening in front of you, despite the fact that clearly there's a safety car scenario there. You've got a presumption that when you're trying to close up to the pack, that you should be driving reasonably quickly until you can see the cars in front. So very lucky that it didn't end both their days.
Yeah.
Of course, you had a very similar moment, 98 in Spa, Michael Schumacher hitting you from behind. Just explain the difficulty in the wet of seeing the guys around you and knowing who is or isn't behind you. I mean, it's just nigh impossible, isn't it?
Well, it's difficult enough to see in your mirrors in dry conditions, but in the wet, there's so much spray coming off your tyres, you don't see at all in your mirrors. There's probably water on your mirrors anyway as the wind brings it around the shell of the mirror. So you'll be relying on the information that your team give you. The engineer will be saying, what the gaps are. But in a safety car scenario like that, you won't get that sort of information. So that's how these incidents can happen.
And I find it incredible that you actually said to me when we were watching that race, Mike and I were here with you, you are listening to the car in front to decide what they're doing and when they're pulling off the throttle and things.
Yeah, well, actually, I think Martin had said that first during the commentary, and then you didn't hear it, so I just stole his line and delivered it to you. But,
typical DC.
Yeah, but it's a bit like, if the lights go out in your house, you have a sort of sense of where you are when you walk to the to the door or whatever. And it's the same with the racing drivers. They know the track so well. They have a mental timing of where the car is. And then they're listening out for different noises to sort of piece where the car is. So that is where they really earn their money in those conditions.
OK. Good news about the win for Red Bull. Double good news that Mark Webber was in second place. His best result ever. Well done to him.
Yeah, fantastic. And he'll be very relieved, both with qualifying and with the race here, because, of course, breaking that leg, a really super quick young teammate, and he'll have had question marks in his mind, and really he's hanging on to him, and he's got a great result, so he'll be very happy. I mean, it's funny you mentioned that instance with David and Michael in Spa. Of course, that's what gave Jordan, where I was at the time, their first 1-2, and it really galvanises a team. We were then regular on the podium the next year, winning races. It really can be a springboard, and so Red Bull will be elated.
Absolutely. Where will they sort of take the impetus from this, Martin?
I think Mark in particular, he'll be disappointed not to have been the first Red Bull winner, having put the work in previous seasons. But where he'll be very satisfied, of course, is the potential he has now for the rest of the season. He's got a great racing car to work with. And I think for the team, it's kind of proof of concept. It's the belief they can get the job done. And it shows to Dietrich Mateschitz that all of the hundreds of millions of euros he spent building that team up was worth it now. And I think if they went through this season and didn't win a race or didn't look much stronger, I could have seen them switching that team off, to be frank, because how much longer would he just keep pouring the money in? And they've stopped any idea of that kind of thing happening.
Martin talks about the sort of confidence that Mark Webber will get from today, but he seems to have had a lot of confidence all season. We saw him sparring today. We saw him sparring with anyone that came near him in Malaysia in the wet, and he had a nice little battle with Jenson Button, didn't he?
Yeah, and what happens at that moment is the tyre just fills up, and suddenly you don't have any contact with the road at all, and it just skates across the surface like a skimming rock. And that's why they can go from looking like they're totally in control one moment.
3 or 4 cars all ran off in a row, and it could easily be, a drain's got blocked or something. And of course, the next lap through, all the drivers have seen it, they know it's there, and they adapt, but they just get caught out by that first lap, and you're a complete passenger, aren't you?
OK, we've talked about the impetus and the confidence the drivers will get from today. Let's also talk about the development of the car, Mike. This is a good one for you. We've had an email in here. It says, of course, Red Bull aren't running with the advantageous double-decker diffuser. James in London wants to know, how long does it take to design and manufacture and then fit a new diffuser? We know Adrian Newey's not here because he's working around the Red Bull. So what sort of timescale are we looking at? That's an email from James.
Yeah, it all depends on how big the modification is, and that's the problem in this case with those double diffusers. When it's just an individual component, you could probably talk, a month of wind tunnel development, or once you've done that, it can be reasonably quick. It'll be 2 to 3 weeks to make the component, and you'll bring it straight there. So that can be reasonably quick. But in this case, with the double diffusers, people are having to move major components at the rear of the car, suspension members, new crash structures, maybe suspension pickups changing, the hydraulic system,
big job.
Electronics. Yeah, it's a huge job. And in Red Bull's case, they've got this pull rod suspension, so they've got suspension components down there. So that's a major redesign of the car. And in that case, that's why it's taking 2 to 3 months.
Another quick email. Jason in Southampton. He's got a tenner on Sebastian Vettel being world champion within 5 years. Go on, all three of you. Money well spent?
I don't think it'll take that long.
Yeah, exactly.
If I was a bookie, I wouldn't be taking the bet.
Yeah, indeed. But he's shown his true class. He's 2 victories in Formula One in those very difficult conditions of Monza, where all the cars finished, and then again here, where again all the main players have finished this race. So he is the Rainmeister of the grid.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing he reminds me of, I was at Renault when Fernando joined as a young kid, and it was very obvious straight away he had it all. And he's the next guy since that looks the same way.
And a good tenner spent, Martin?
Absolutely. This business is all about managing pressure. And we saw him win in Monza in a Toro Rosso. We saw him yesterday given one flying lap to get the job done. He stuck it on pole. Treacherous conditions today, and he wins the race without making an error. And if you can withstand that kind of pressure at such a young age, you've got the job done.
Yeah, I think that's what really makes me remind me of Fernando in that situation. I mean, it just didn't faze him at all, did he? And other drivers, they'll start thinking about it. The pressure's right on them, and 3 times, 1 lap, just did it. Fantastic.
Okay, if I scroll through here, we've had an awful lot of emails coming into f1@bbc.co.uk. People asking why wet weather master Lewis Hamilton spun off so many times today. Does that give us an example of just how difficult it is out there, DC?
Well, indeed, of course, those conditions are very difficult. You saw a lot of cars running wide. But I think that if we look at Lewis's performance in the past, as we join him in car here, he had one of the best cars, arguably the best car in the wet, and he made better use of it than his teammate. He now is not in the best car on the grid, and here you see just lost the back end, obviously standing water at apex as he's opening the throttle. Who would be able to catch that? That went so quickly. I don't doubt that if he was driving the Red Bull today, he would have been able to put in a performance comparable to Sebastian.
Yeah, I mean, you see the Ferrari drivers were going off all the time. I mean, you see the guys at the front, yeah, they look perfect, but they're driving the best car in those conditions. And as you go down the field, you just see people with more and more problems.
I was very confused by Lewis today because early doors, he was steaming through, wasn't he? Braking low, and then he couldn't keep it pointing in the right direction for some reason in the second half of the race.
Yeah, I think what that shows, Martin, is just the evolution of these tyres during a race. Now, certainly my last recollection of driving with these wet tyres, they seem to vary a lot more than at the earlier part of my career, and certainly when you were still driving. For whatever reason, the compounds are able to work very well for short periods of the run, but during the run, as you lose a little bit of gauge, you've got less rubber that's moving around, you then lose a bit of temperature in the tyre. So I think what we saw is possibly when there's a lot of rubber, running off some rubber as he leaves the turn there, right? He'll be needing that later in the lap, that's for sure.
I mean, there was a great shot actually as Lewis was overtaking Kimi, and you realise just how little you guys can see when this is happening, because you saw the flashing light, and then coming up the brake, it just disappeared. You couldn't see it, and yet he's still brave enough to go up the inside.
Well, that's Heikki Kovalainen going past Lewis later on in the race. And I suppose, Martin, for people that were confused by Lewis's performance today, it's just worth a timely reminder that this is a different car, so it's a very different way of having to deal with it in the wet. Last year, it just so happened at Silverstone, for example, the car was great.
Yeah, and the car, certainly, I mean, we've got to remember that both McLarens one stop, so they would have more tyre wear than many. But Kovalainen, his car wasn't flying off the road, so it suggests that Lewis uses a different maybe throttle map or different driving style. Something made his McLaren fly off the road more than Kovalainen, who beat him, of course.
OK, well, let's hear from both the drivers, Heikki Kovalainen and Lewis Hamilton. Here are their thoughts on the race.
Lewis, several spins, much more overtaking. It was exciting to watch. What was it like to drive?
It was terrible. It was not. It was a little bit fun at the beginning when I had some grip. But as always, I don't know if it's my driving style or my car, but it seemed to destroy my tyres very, very early on. And I remember, especially at the end, they said there's 20 laps left. I've just come out, and after 5 laps, my front left tyre was finished. And so it was just really tough, you know, aquaplaning all over the place. And I'm sure it's the same for everyone, but I was giving them my best.
Any positives you can take away from this weekend as we head to Bahrain next weekend?
Just that we finished, and obviously the reliability of the car is fantastic, and so great job to the guys back home. Let's continue to try and move forward and try and score some more points. But a good, is it 5th and 6th we got for me and Heikki, so some good points for the team.
I think we'll be hoping for quite a calm race in Bahrain to see where everybody really is.
I hope so. Thank you.
Heikki, from not doing a racing lap until this race, you've done pretty well today. Was this a result that you expected?
I didn't really expect anything from this race, because these conditions, it's always anything can happen. You can win a race and you can go off very easy, and it was just important trying to stay on the track. The tyres worked quite okay, the car worked pretty well, and little by little we were able to move towards the front, and the strategy worked out quite okay. So it was pretty good then for a weekend, and with these difficult conditions managed to score a few points and clearly gone forwards with the car. It's the most important thing, and now next race we have a few more updates and we try to do even better.
You can take some positives away from this race probably for the first time this season in that case, and you'll be looking forward to Bahrain?
Yeah, absolutely. I think to finish the race is a big relief, big bonus again, you know, to go through everything, and obviously a difficult race. So to manage everything throughout the race, we can be happy about, and the team has done a really good job with the strategy, and also we managed to improve the car a little bit during the pit stop. So you know, everything's going fine. We just need that extra bit of more performance, which will eventually come. The team is working hard, and we will get there, and then we'll be fighting for the victories.
Well, Martin, some good points. How difficult were the cars? I mean, we saw Lewis spinning, what, 3, 4, 5 times?
Very, very difficult. I think, everyone out there, first of all, you've got to congratulate Sebastian and Red Bull and Adrian. I think great for a 1-2 for them, and that's fantastic for the sport. I think for us, then, solid points, that's worthwhile. And Lewis was trying very hard and made it exciting. Obviously, he had a few spins, but that's just his determination, perhaps his confidence just to push so hard in these conditions. But for Heikki, who hasn't had much running in the races this year, to get to the end without any mistakes at all was a fantastic drive by him. So, overall, we weren't going to live with either the Red Bulls or the Brauns today. So to have some solid points in those 2 places is great effort by the team, great drives by both the drivers.
And strategy was quite good, one stopping, but that would have meant that their tyres were worn down towards the end. Maybe that would have contributed.
No, they had to really make those tyres last, and you know, frankly, we didn't expect quite this weather today when we were setting our strategy in qualifying, but because once we saw this sort of weather, we know we had to go for a one stop. It would have been easier if it had been a bit drier, and we could have done that on the intermediates. On the wets, it was a bit of a strain on the tyres and on the drivers, but I think both of them did a fantastic job. I think the team did a good job today.
Bahrain next week. You've had a new diffuser here, new front wing, all sorts. New bits in Bahrain. Are you going to be quicker in the dry?
We need new bits, clearly. We're not quick enough yet, so everyone's pushing hard, and you know, we will have some new bits. Hopefully we'll have enough to make sure we can consolidate this and do a solid job in Bahrain.
Thanks, Martin.
Well, a quick mention on McLaren's development. A couple of new pieces here. They seem to have done the trick, and we talked about the fact that if any team can improve their position on the grid, it's McLaren with their expertise and their money, I suppose you'd say.
Yeah, I mean, they've definitely made a step forward this weekend. We saw that both in the practice sessions and in the race. I mean, they'll be fairly relieved. That's a solid result for them in this situation. As I said, they couldn't live with the quicker boys, but, you know, they've been working hard. I was speaking to Paddy Lowe, the technical director, yesterday, and he just said it's the most manic time that he can ever remember, just the number of bits coming through and the pressure on the guys back at the factory. So there's some reward for it. They've definitely made a step forward, but, of course, they've got a lot more to do.
And Martin Whitmarsh didn't just look flooded in rainwater. He looked actually a bit flooded with relief. I imagine he's happy to take the story away from all the other problems that McLaren have had and talk about two drivers in the points.
Yeah, and they're not over yet because they've got this hearing on April the 29th over the stewards' stuff in Australia, but they're obviously working on that. I think the whole team will be relieved. I mean, McLaren probably have the biggest and best resource of any team in Formula One, so you'd expect them to play catch-up very quickly, but there's no testing available to them. Although we've had 4 flyaway races in 5 weeks anyway, so always difficult this time of the year. But, you know, they'll have to keep bringing bits along, trying them. The drivers will have to develop and adapt quickly. They'll throw them on in practice sessions, and they've got to come up with the right answers. The data needs to follow the drivers' comments and, of course, the stopwatch. And I would expect McLaren to come marching through towards the front.
OK. Let's go back to some more emails, f1@bbc.co.uk. Lots and lots of emails coming in about Ferrari. I mean, it seems to be the big question people are asking on here, is their season over after just 3 races, DC?
Well, clearly not. There's a long way to go. And in the same way that we've been talking about McLaren having the ability to recover the situation and use the resources to develop the car, I would expect Ferrari to be in that same situation. You know, they're the most winning team, constructor and drivers over the last decade. So to write them off so early would be, I think, foolish. But clearly they have major issues that they need to try and overcome. And we've touched on the fact that doing that in season now without testing is going to be extremely difficult.
Right, let's talk about Felipe Massa. We'll have a look at him stopping on the track and try and work out what went wrong in just a few seconds. But he had a few problems in the rain. We can see him spinning out here. This looks like a difficult car to drive in the wet.
Yeah, I think, again, both of them falling off. Kimi falling off, you know, under the safety car. And it's, you know, I don't know whether he's put a wheel on the curb there and just lost it. But it's obviously just and you see there, it's very, very difficult car to drive.
And this is his car giving up the ghost, I think, David.
Yeah, I've had this happen to me in the past where you're going along, everything seems fine, and then we'll hear he'll just lose drive. And, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if that turns out to be a hydraulic-related issue, because what you can see on the screen there, of course, is the dash is still alive. There's still power in that car because you see the lights on the steering wheel between his hands. But it just seems as if he's got no throttle control and no gearbox control, which is obviously all controlled hydraulically. So it'll be interesting to see what the press release says.
Sometimes when you're travelling really slowly, the systems are not getting topped up and pumped up as they need to be. And I agree with DC, it doesn't look like a complete power failure. But, you know, you do need to keep all of the pressures up. And if you're not moving along and you're not pulling the revs or pulling the G-force sometimes with regard to the fuel system pickup.
Another thing it could possibly be is, we've seen this before within Red Bull, is the amount of water when you're following in the pack. The airbox, you know, the water goes down the air intake above the driver's head, and it saturates this foam filter that sits on top of the engine. And when you're just not running quickly, you don't have the charge, you know, the injection of the engine running cleanly. and it might have been something as simple as that. It's just become flooded with water.
I mean, to me, looking at that, that looks like, you said hydraulics, it looked like he lost throttle control, because you could hear the engine just go down to idle and just sit there, and he's lost everything, and he's just sitting there with the engine on idle because he's got no throttle, and then he's had to switch it off.
These cars are sensitive souls, aren't they? If they're not treated in the right way, they don't like it.
Well, you see them as soon as they park them in the garage, umbilical cords come from all over the place, and to keep the valve systems pumped up and to keep them warm. Otherwise, when they fire it up, the seals or the piston rings won't work properly. I mean, you really have to nurse them, and that's why an army of people walk off the grid when they disappear on the formation lap.
Yeah, I think you touched on it as well, Martin, on the behind the safety car, that they don't come alive. I think you said 60 miles an hour was the figure, that you start to generate some loads and the driver can feel the car.
I mean, they are sensitive and complex things, and it just amazes me that they last races when the drivers like these guys treat them with such disdain all the time, like throwing them over curves and gravel traps with gay abandon.
Well, I know. One man who wasn't treating his car with disdain for a lot of that race was Sebastian Buemi. Let's have a quick mention about his weekend for Toro Rosso, Martin. He's looked pretty impressive, both in quali and in the race.
I think he's looked impressive all year, frankly, apart from the first Friday we saw him out on track where it looked like he'd been rehearsing on the wrong Sony PlayStation game as far as I could see. But then he just came alive in the race, and you know, he was hustling with the Ferraris, wasn't he? He was up there. He was in the middle of a Ferrari sandwich early on in the race with the same engine, with a team that probably has, you know, conditions. All right, he had a bit of brain fade behind the safety car, which compromised his day, and still he came through and scored some points.
Well, I think that Red Bull very much see he's part of the young driver development program, and they see this year as a learning year for him. So he'll be surpassing their expectations. I think they would have expected Sebastian Bourdais to have been leading that Toro Rosso team. But so far, Sebastian Buemi has been showing him the way. So I would be very nervous if I was Bourdais right now.
Yeah, I mean, and the surprise for me, I mean, in Melbourne he was fantastic. Here all weekend he's been fantastic. But he didn't have a particularly special career in GP2. You know, I wouldn't, from watching GP2, I wouldn't have picked him out as someone who was going to perform at the level that he is now. But he's come into Formula One, and he looks born to it.
OK, let's hear from Sebastian Buemi.
Sebastian, it looked pretty eventful out there. How was it from your point of view?
It was very difficult. I think this is the most difficult race of my life. It was so much water on the circuit. We couldn't see anything, and I mean, it was quite dangerous as well. So in the end, to finish the race, and even with 1 point, it's just very good.
Lots of positives for you, though, to take away. I mean, it must be a massive learning experience, but you were passing Kimi Räikkönen, other former world champions, with relative ease out there.
Yeah, I mean, we were quite competitive at the beginning of the race. Then we struggled a little bit. Maybe the tire went down a bit and the water increased. So it's always difficult to keep the car on the circuit. I think in some points I didn't push enough, but in the end, you know, to finish with 1 point and scoring two times already this year is very good. Thank you.
Well, 3 races for Sebastian Buemi. Twice he's finished in the points. Congratulations to him. One man who didn't finish in the points today was Jarno Trulli. Despite Toyota impressing up until this race this season, he struggled in qualifying and struggled in the race after being hit rather hard from behind.
Indeed, but yeah, unbelievable.
A strong car and strong driver to have the confidence in his car to go back out on the track.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. But, yeah, that was a fairly major accident, wasn't it? And later on, of course, we'd see the nose fall off again. Clearly, some brackets broken. But I think at that point of the race, for some reason, Jarno just lost confidence in the whole situation. He was lapping 5 or 6 seconds slow per lap than Glock, his teammate. And Kubica just got caught out by his caution going into the last corner. OK,
well, we'll hear from Jarno Trulli. But first, here's Robert Kubica.
Robert, pretty eventful race out there. Just talk us through it. How much damage was there to your car in the end?
I think not a lot. Looking, fortunately, the accident with Jarno was quite heavy. I went quite a lot in the air. Unfortunately, when I touched the brakes, he slowed down quite a lot. I was crossing the river full of water, and which was crossing the track, and I just get aquaplaning. Then we changed front wing, and I could go until the end, so the result would be still not bad. But unfortunately, we had problem with the front wing. I don't know what happened, but yeah, we will see. Thank you.
Jarno, just tell us what happened out there.
I don't know. I just been hit by the back. I don't know who. It was difficult condition, a lot of aquaplaning out there, and it was not going well for me, the race, and it's a shame.
How difficult were the conditions at the start? Was the safety car right to stay out for so long?
Yeah, probably could have been out for even longer because the situation it's quite difficult, especially with the aquaplaning.